Hello everyone, my name is Thomas and I welcome you to Exploit Tutorial. Exploit Tutorial Learning Made Easy. Today we are analyzing problems in basic mechanics. Now, in basic mechanics we have forces and in some of the examples we resolve forces into two components. So with this particular example, we are going to analyze forces and resolve them into two components. That's the S component and the Y component. So there's this diagram being given to us that we have our Y component, S component with the respective forces, 80 Newton force, 120 Newton force, and a 150 Newton force. So the question says, determine the X and Y components of the forces shown. So the question says we should determine the S component and the Y component of the various forces that are shown. So let's quickly analyze the problem to find our solution. So solution. So for the 80 Newton force, for 80 Newton force, to underline it neatly. Now I want to find the S component of the 80 Newton force. So we have Fx for the 80 Newton force. This is the 80 Newton force which lies in the first quadrant. So with the 80 Newton force, it makes an angle of 40 degrees with the x-axis. So resolving the 80 Newton into S component, since the angle is adjacent to the x-axis, the S component will take the cos. So we have 80 cos 40 degrees. I hope you are with me. Good. Now 80 cos 40 degrees will give us 61.284 Newton. Very good. Now that's the S component of the 80 Newton force. Let's quickly move on to the Y component, which is Fy for the 80 Newton force. Or you can put small 80 here to indicate that it is for the 80 Newton force. Now, with the Y component, we have 80. Since the angle here we are using, 40 is adjacent to the x, it means that this angle will be opposite to the y. Since this y is the y, the angle will be opposite to the y-axis. So the y-axis will take cos. It will take sine, sorry. So we have 80 sine 40 degrees. And calculating that, we will have 51.423 Newton. Good. Please, I hope you've done that yourself. Yes. Try and be working it out yourself so that you follow suit. Thank you. Now, let's quickly move on to the 120 Newton force. So with the 120 Newton force, we have our Fx, that's the S component for the 120 Newton, be equal to, since we have the 120 line in the first quadrant. Now, you need to find the angle the 120 force makes with the x-axis. So you realize that there is 30 degrees between 120 and 80 Newton, and we have 40 degrees between the 80 Newton and the x-axis. So the total angle here is 70 degrees. So we are going to use the 70 degrees to resolve the 120 Newton force. So the S component will be 120 cos 70 degrees. Why cos? Because the angle is adjacent to the x-axis. Good. So 120 cos 70 degrees will give us 41.042 Newton. Let's quickly move on to the Y component. That's the Fy of the 120 Newton force. So we have 120 sine 70 degrees. And this one will give us 112.763 Newton. Please, I hope you are with me. Yes, since the x took cos because the angle is adjacent to the x-axis. Then the y component will take what? Sine. But because they are all lying in the first quadrant, the y component is positive, the x component is positive. Then let's move on to our last part of the question, which is the 150 Newton force. So for 150 Newton, well underlined, neatly underlined, we have our x component Fx for 150 to be equal to negative 150 cos 35 degrees. Why negative? The reason being that this particular axis, now we are in the, this particular axis is the negative x-axis. So when we resolve this 150 Newton, it will lie on the negative x-axis. That's why the x component for the 150 Newton is negative. Please, I hope you are with me. Good. Now our answer will be negative 122.872 Newton. Then finally we have the F, that's the y component for the 150 Newton, which will be equal to 150 sine 35 degrees. And this one will not take negative. Why? Because when we resolve the 150 to the y component, it will lie on the positive y axis. So that the y component of the 150 Newton force wouldn't be negative, but rather positive. And our answer will be 86.036 Newton. 86.0